Welcome back to the FloTrack podcast. FloTrackPodcast@gmail.com is our email address. We're just days away from Sunday's London Marathon. And on this episode, we are going to be talking about the men's field. You can tune into our women's preview, which we'll post on Friday. I'm Kevin Sully, joined by Lincoln Shrike. Lincoln, how are you?
Gosh, I'm doing great, Kevin. Thanks for asking. Not at all super congested and getting over a really rough cold. Feeling pretty good. London is the most exciting event we've had on the track and field / road running calendar since the pandemic hit in March. So for them to have pulled this together, they deserve major props. And it almost makes this last 6 months of, basically no competition other than a few one-off meets. It almost makes it worth it. We finally get the matchup we wanted. I am so excited for Bekele versus Kipchoge. I should probably say Kipchoge versus Bekele because Kipchoge has earned having his name said first in the matchup.
Let's start there. If you were to assess this matchup, percent chance that Kipchoge wins, what would you give it right now?
Yeah, I anticipated this question, so thanks for asking it. I prepared a lot for this. I'm going to go with 85, and I think that's conservative, to be honest. We know that he's won marathons at a better than 85% clip in his career. That said,
yes,
Bekele's awfully good, and if Bekele, catches a flyer, to use a golf reference, he can be nearly as good as Kipchoge, which we saw last year in Berlin. Now, I know, obviously, Kipchoge not in that race, but 2 seconds away from the world record. No one saw that coming. So you have to give him some credit, that is Bekele. But given that Kipchoge's won at a 3% clip for his career, I think you have to say it's about an 85% chance that he will win.
Mm-hmm. That's about what I was thinking too. That is a number that I had in my head. It was fluctuating anywhere between 75 and 90. The two extremes there. Let's start first, though. I want to start actually talking about Bekele first and not Kipchoge. If you were to construct a short list, 3 reasons, 3 things that would need to happen, 3 races or 3 ways the race would need to play out, or 3 things that would have to happen to the conditions or something in the buildup for Bekele to pull this upset, what would they be?
Gosh. Well, you'd want to start to say some equipment malfunction, but then you're like, oh no, Kipchoge's weathered that. Divine intervention, is that one of my options? A food poisoning incident? No. In all seriousness,
an insecure biosphere.
Yeah. Perhaps Bekele leaving the London bubble to get carry out. I don't know, and getting quarantined past race time. He will have to run as well as he did in Berlin. That's baseline. He maybe needs to run better than that, but we know for sure at a bottom level he has to run as well as he did in Berlin, which he had never done previously in the marathon. So there's that. He's got to, we'll just say it, he's got to run better than he's ever run in the marathon. And then, excuse me, I think he has to hope that for whatever reason, Kipchoge is not the Kipchoge that we saw in Vienna. I don't know why that would be. This is a loop course. Kind of not that Vienna was loops but Monza was. I mean, this guy, he's not like bored by the fact that this is going to be loops. I don't know. There's really not much other than you're rolling the dice for Bekele and saying you have to be fitter than you've ever been, and you have to hope for an off day. Those are the 2 things. On a more specific level, I don't know if you can identify anything, because where is the weakness in Kipchoge? It's maybe the fact that he hasn't run a marathon in over a year, of which it's been a competitive race. Maybe he's I don't know. I'm 100% acknowledge I'm grasping at straws here, but the fact that I don't know. You could say he's not as motivated as Bekele, but I doubt that. It's really hard. Mm-hmm. It's going to take the off day from Kipchoge that we've never seen. That's basically the story.
Yeah. No, I agree with those two. Needs the off day. That hasn't happened yet because the one time he lost to the world record holder at the time in the marathon. So it wasn't a bad race. He's won 10 in a row in regulation marathons. Add in Monza, add in Ineos 159. I'm counting those as wins because in one of those races he actually ran against two other people, and in the other one he ran 159.40. So I'm just gonna say
Yeah.
he's won 12 marathons in a row. He's never had a
Yeah.
bad race. So yes, he needs something to have gone wrong in Kipchoge's buildup or something on race day to make it so Kipchoge is not 100%. He needs to run the race of his marathon life. I don't think he needs to run the best race ever of his career because he had some really special ones on the track, but he needs to run the best marathon of his
Okay.
life. And then I'll add in my third thing would be he needs the weather to cooperate and he needs the pace to be even. And I'm inclined to think that the pace will be even because if it's not even, there's going to be people screaming at the pace setters
Yeah.
every 2K. What are you doing? Get back on pace. Let's make sure this thing is nice and smooth throughout. It's not like they're not going to be able to stay in communication for them, but any sort of disruption in the matrix just favors Kipchoge. And that's
Yeah.
weird to say. It's weird to say because we talked about this board. Usually that sort of stuff favors the underdog, but I don't think that's the case because we've seen him do it in the rain. We've seen him do it in tactical races like in Rio. We've seen it do it with his insoles coming out. We've seen it when nobody's with him. We've seen it him do it when he's under pressure late in the race. But
Yeah.
so I think Bekele is the one who needs the stable environment. If you look, Lincoln, at their 4 marathons that they've run against each other, they've never been close. Bekele's never been able to keep it close against Kipchoge. His marathon career has been up and down, but when he's raced Kipchoge, he hasn't brought his best stuff. So he needs something to change that.
Yeah, and I get worried, and I know this was trending on the top of Let's Run, and I don't want to read too much into it or just pull my takes off of letsrun.com. All respect to that website, but that there can be some absurd threads. But there was one at the top talking about Hugh Brasher, who gave an interview to Inside the Games.biz, one of the European outlets covering the race.
Shout out to .biz.
And yeah, .biz. Who says .coms are the coolest? Hugh Brasher, the race director, had a quote, and he refers to the difficulty Ethiopia's had politically, which is obviously a concern, and there's been other athletes who've talked about that. But he says, after introducing it with that, he says, quote, Kenenisa has not always been able to train in the way he would normally. That makes me nervous, Kevin. That makes me a little. That makes we need for Kipchoge, for not that I'm rooting one way or the other, but for this to be a competitive race, things I think needed to be ideal for Kipchoge, or excuse me, for Bekele, and it worries me as far as wanting to see a close race that it hasn't been ideal. So that's one thing against it. That's one. The reports out of our post Berlin last year where he got back in the shape of his life. He training was, he took on, I forget if I don't think he took on a different coach, but he
moved to the Netherlands, right?
And took it seriously. Right. That's what it was. Sorry.
Got a new diet.
Right. And maybe that stayed the same. You assume that stayed the same because that would be logical after running the marathon of his life, that he would follow it up with a similar type of regimen. But I don't know if things haven't been ideal back home, and we're hearing the race director, the guy who's supposed to be chatting it up as, both guys are at the fittest they've ever been in their lives, world record or bust. I mean, maybe not that extreme, but when you hear we're already having apology, we already have a Bekele apologist. That makes me a little sweaty. I don't like that. And I'm wondering if this is going to be more of a blowout.
But yeah, there's always a possibility, even if he was fifth, that it was a blowout. But what do we know about Kipchoge's buildup? What do we ever know about Kipchoge's buildup? Because he doesn't run half marathons.
Right.
We just assume he's fit.
Yeah, we definitely assume he's fit because it's Eliud Kipchoge.
Right.
There would be like a cosmic wormhole open up if he got out of shape. Like all of a sudden, if his something caused him to like slip outside 204 shape, like something would happen in the world. They'd be like, "What was that?" And it was like,
Yeah.
Eliud Kipchoge is out of shape. Uh-oh. We would feel it. It's in the
Okay.
air. Mike Smith said you can feel it, the change in the temperature. You should feel the intensity change. You would feel that in the air if Eliud Kipchoge was not ready to
Okay.
go. Maybe he's not in Ineos shape, but I bet he's pretty close. I bet he's very, very close. I'm not worried about him at
Because
all.
I know, but Jared Ward said he had about 8 weeks notice because it was announced 7 weeks ago, right? And he said a week before that he heard that they were going to do it and then didn't know if he could get in. Now maybe they gave Kipchoge a little bit more heads up because he's Kipchoge and they're building the race around
Absolutely.
him. And
Absolutely.
but how many weeks could they possibly have known? 10 weeks, 12 weeks? I wonder how much lead up he had. I wonder how important that is to him. I wonder if his training was hampered similarly to Bekele. Now every country is different with their own circumstances and access to training facilities and training partners. So
Mm-hmm.
we're not really going to know until after these guys run, and then we'll find out afterwards. What would you say? This is a silly question, but since I asked it with Bekele, I'll ask it with Kipchoge. What needs to happen for Kipchoge to win on Sunday?
Well, he will need to run as he usually does. He will need to not have an off race to the extent that we've never seen. So he has to avoid. You do get to a point where, and I'm trying to take this question seriously because I was tempted to just joke, but I know people want to
You
hear
can
my
do
serious
both.
take.
You want to do the
You
joke
can do
first,
both.
and then you can do the.
I'll do the serious answer first. Kipchoge has been so good in the marathon. Eventually, the marathon has to be like, I'm taking back my reputation. There's not a human being that's figured out this distance. Eventually, something's going to go wrong for him, right? And is he going to be 45 and running 203? No, I understand he's not 45 right now. He's like 36, 37. But what has to happen, or what could derail him, is just the percentages of the marathon. He's been absurd his entire career in this distance. And that, checking the fact that he's a human being and he breathes and he bleeds just like the rest of us, you would think eventually the marathon's going to come back and bite him at some point. And if there was any race to do it, it would be the one where like you said, maybe his preparation was well short of what he's used to, and that takes away the edge he has to be essentially perfect in a marathon. I don't know. Other than that, he just needs to get out there, follow the pacemakers as he always does, smile, and I don't think coast to victory because Garamu kind of pushed him last time. He'll have to work, but he's going to get out there probably and run 202 and win. I mean, it's very, very predictable. And barring something happening that's never happening, he's going to win, and I think win convincingly.
He's the only one in the field who knows what 159 feels like. He's the only one in the field who knows what too flat feels like. And he has an immense psychological edge over the rest of his competition.
I mean,
Bekele
can't be understated how intense. Yeah.
Well, Bekele has a bunch of medals, but he has an 0-4 record against him, and his PR. I think you should count Ineos, not for the purposes of does it count as a world record, but his legs have gone that fast. He has run 159.40. It wasn't regulation, but if they go through at 60-20 or something like that, Bekele's like, wow, this is basically world record pace. And Kipchoge could say, yeah, but this is slower than I went through when I ran 159.40. So I think what he needs to do, and what he almost does, is he's like a great tennis player. He just waits for somebody else to make a mistake, is what he can do. Just keep knocking the ball back. Just keep clicking off these mile splits until somebody is either just dies, which is the less romantic way to go about it, or they make some foolish move and they really go for it and then they fall off. The most he's been pushed, probably we would say that Berlin marathon with Guye Adola. And Adola actually opened up a gap on him. And you go back and look at that, you think maybe if he didn't go too soon, he could have actually had a shot. Because it's not like every single race Kipchoge is is blowing people out. He makes it look so easy, but I think there is room there at least to keep it close if they don't panic. But when
Yeah.
you talk about he needs to have a bad race, I don't even know what that looks like with Kipchoge in the marathon because we have not seen a bad race ever from him.
Right. Don't you think he could? I mean, these guys are good. Not just Bekele, but Garamiu, Washahune is good as well. But it feels like to me if he wanted to blow these guys out, and obviously it'd be a little bit more risky, but he could. I think back to post race after the Rio Olympics, and I don't remember if it was Rupp or somebody else started to press the issue in the Rio Olympic marathon, and they looked over at Kipchoge. And this guy, mind you, this guy wasn't even Kenyan, and Kipchoge was like, "Not yet, not yet." And those two guys are competing against each other. He's so in control that I wonder,
Mm-hmm.
are we? And maybe not the Adola race in Berlin, just because he did literally take the lead, but particularly like in London in 2019, where it was kind of like eye opening that Garamiu was under 203 and was, had some pressure on Kipchoge late. You wonder if that was just, this is how Kipchoge is electing to run this race and not necessarily a product of he was nearly beat. I'm sure you think that way as well, but I don't think, basically my point is that we should conflate close races with he was nearly beaten. I think that's a strategic decision.
Competitive, not close.
Yeah.
There's a difference between the two. I think I agree
Yeah,
with you. Yeah,
competitive. Yeah.
and there's a difference between a shark and a remora fish, and there's a lot of remora fish out there right now who are sucking on to Kipchoge and getting pulled to these very fast times. But we all know who's at the top of the food chain. And even you saw it with Bekele. Same thing when he ran the 201.41. He's the shark, and he's pulling some people to the fast times. But there was no doubt in that race who the best was. It's interesting. You look at these other guys in the field, right? You look at Moisenet Garamo. Wow, 202.55. But that was, he's losing to Kipchoge. You see Washington, 203.16. That's from London in 2019. You look at Cisse Lema, 203.36. Well, that was third in that Bekele race. Like, that's the remora fish group here. There's the remora fish group, and then there's the shark group.
I didn't anticipate that reference coming into this show. I do enjoy it. Yeah, Kipchoge, the nicest shark in the world, so at least there's that. But yeah, he's a shark for sure, and the others are remora fish, which I've never heard of, Kevin. I'll be honest.
I'm talking about the little fish that they're right there. No. Google remora fish. They're the little fish that are in the slipstream the entire time.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Of course.
Yeah. They're along for the ride.
Absolutely, that's an apt comparison. Absolutely. Yes, I think Kipchoge's clearly in the driver's seat, and he's going to have some people tail him for a little bit, but I don't think we're going to see any real. It may come down to the last lap. It may come down to the last, I don't know, maybe the last kilometer. But when it comes down to the last 800, when it comes down to the last 400, it's winning time, and I don't think there's anybody who's good enough. I know this is extreme. I'm leaning towards the fact I'm going to be surprised if Bekele finishes, because I think he's that far behind, and I don't think this is a guy who's going to finish a race if he's just getting crushed early, and I think there's a chance he gets crushed.
I am of the same thinking, although I'm putting him third, just because I think one of these other guys is going to jump up and have.
See, I think he either finishes, Kevin. I think he either finishes first, second, or DNF. That's. I don't think there's a possibility he finishes third. Well, I mean, is there? Yes, but I think. Yeah, go ahead.
The scenario I'm envisioning is what we talked about, where it's competitive late. Kipchoge moves away in the final 2 laps, and because there are laps, it's easier to tell where you are. And I think as human beings, you kind of, when you hear the bell, if there is a bell, I'm not sure, but with 1 to go, you get a little jolt of energy in your body, and I could see Kipchoge going for it, and then there's some separation, and then Bekele at that point, he's too far in he's not going to drop out with a lap to go, but somebody like Lema or Wasserman or Garamiu is able to pass him. But I don't, like I've told you before, I think Kipchoge's a solid a more solid pick for first than Bekele is for second, right? That's a much more tenuous spot to be in.
Yeah.
So that's a you'd get much tougher odds there. But I want you to envision a Kipchoge upset just for a moment. Can you do that for me?
Yeah.
Okay, close your eyes.
I'm
Okay.
trying.
When it does end, how does it end? Does it end because someone shows up and runs 2:01:30, or does it end because he runs a really bad race, like he runs 2:06?
Mm-hmm. Right. Given the fact that he has shown no desire to, he's not indicated like, oh, any race could be my last marathon. He at least has
Mm-hmm.
not said that publicly. He seems to absolutely love training. I know he doesn't race very much, but he clearly lives to run. I tend to actually think the marathon will eventually get him, just because I think he's going to race until he can't anymore, not just, I'm going to get all the records and then stop while I'm ahead. I don't think he's that type of a person. So eventually I think it's going to be a surprise because we don't see him ever tune up. Eventually he is going to show up and, for lack of a better term, lay an egg, and we're going to be like, oh, the era of dominance is now in question and maybe over. It's just going to come in a snap because he races twice a year, or in the case of this one, once a year,
Mm-hmm.
and there's no barometers. There's no. We're not going to see it coming, I don't think. Now, maybe he finishes second here, and we're saying he's starting to slip. I don't think that's going to happen. But my point is, I don't think we're going to see somebody that just wins this race, runs 2:02, and says, you know what, that's it for me. I think he's going to keep going until he can't. What do you? What's your opinion?
I'm inclined to believe that too. I see it more on the Bolt model. Bolt didn't get beat by somebody who ran 9:57. Bolt got beat because Bolt got slower and Bolt got older.
Yeah.
Now, with Bolt, there were indications that he was slowing down for a couple of years, and he staved it off. But he raced a lot more, so you could see it coming. I think you're 100% right. But I think the sports world as a whole needs to appreciate what Eliud Kipchoge is doing, and not just the running world. And I don't know what more he can do to get people's attention. He's already run 1:59:40. He's already run 2 flat 25. But is there a more clutch performer in all of sports than Eliud Kipchoge, who's not only going against the best marathoners in the world, but going against this distance that has made fools of most people who attempt it at least once over their attempts? And now he has a double-digit win streak. I mean, I know you talk about Roger Federer or Tiger Woods or Jordan or LeBron or Serena Williams or Katie Ledecky, it's tough to compare sport to sport, but I think, just as with Bolt, we're looking at someone. I mean, I think, I know we've talked about this before, but another year or so, and he's definitely going to go past, he's going to exceed Bolt. I don't think there's a level of appreciation here for what Kipchoge is doing, because what he's doing doesn't really even matter relative to his competition at this point, because the distance, just the accomplishment of doing 26.2 miles and never having a bad day is unfathomable.
Right. I've been waiting for a lifetime for the Kipchoge versus Jordan arguments. I'm ready. You're right. For it to be fully appreciated, I mean, part of it is I think our understanding of how he's appreciated on a global scale is a little distorted, because when we look at Olympic sports that get the attention of ESPN or the national media who covers sports other than track and field, like ourselves, they're going to cover dominant Olympic athletes that are American. So maybe he's not going to get that full appreciation here, but on a global level, I think maybe we'd start to see more of a comparison of him among the absolute greatest athletes of all time. And I know it's been written about, and I think 100% you can make the argument he's the greatest athlete of all time. But, we do that, and then everyone, people want to factor in the guy who free soloed the Yosemite or
El
whatever,
Capitan. Yeah.
So yeah, El Capitan. So that's just such a diverse argument. It's tough to fully make a sound argument without, it's like, well, who do I consider? Who do I leave off? But his run in the marathon um, is still so incredible because no other human ever has had this long of a streak. You can make the argument that Bridget Kosgei's 2:14 is just as good, if not better, than Kipchoge's marathon. It's not about the one-offs. It's not even about the 1:59. It's the fact that he has continued to do this race after race after race, particularly at a time, excuse me, when he's 35 years old. And you would think given the fact that he was winning world titles at in 2003, that he should be burnt out or his career should be over. It's remarkable how long this has lasted.
Mhm.
He should be right up there with Michael Phelps, with Jordan, with Woods, all those people, and you could make the argument he's better.
Mm-hmm. And that's just because we have this American perspective through which we see things, or is it team sport versus individual? Because I think a lot of people would name Michael Phelps because he's American, but marathon running is certainly more relatable than swimming. And I know the medal haul is different, but
It's
I mean,
distorted.
or people would mention, or people would say, oh, Simone Biles, but it's like, how many people are doing backflips in their backyard? It's a very difficult argument. It's a very fraught argument, but I just think we're so far past uncharted territory with him. And I don't even think we talk about it enough. Like in the running community, I don't think we talk about his status amongst all athletes enough because it's just become routine. He could go out.
He's literally the perfect athlete. I mean, he's a perfect athlete. His the way that the way his aura is awe-inspiring. His love for training, I think, is unmatched. His record in the marathon obviously is unmatched. And I mean, and he did something that even all of us who followed it closely pre the Breaking 2 event, I would have said under no circumstances is a sub 2 hour marathon possible, at least in what we've did. It's anyone could say, hey, there's a kid in high school right now and he's going to win. He's going to lead this NBA team to 7 NBA titles. And we're going to have an argument that he's the greatest of all time in the NBA. And I say, yeah, that's possible. I just don't think we're going to see somebody win 13 out of 14 marathons at the highest level, break a barrier. Well, the barrier's been broken, but run under 2 hours. That person's not out there. I think there's one right now, and that there'll ever be. I think there's going to be one Eliud Kipchoge, and there will never be a debate about who the best distance runner is because it's clearly him.
Yeah, and it's gotten to the point where in this race, he could run, say, 2:02. Say he runs 2:02:15, and he beats Bekele. Bekele has a good race, but Bekele loses by 45 seconds. He beats the second best distance runner by 45 seconds and runs 2:02:15, which would be his second fastest legal mark, his 4th fastest marathon of all time. And we would say, that sounds about right. And we'd keep moving. Good. And we just throw that one in the pile and say, that's expected. But 1:59:40, 2 flat 25, 2:01:39, 2:02:37, 2:03:05, 2:03:32, 2:04 flat, 2:04:05, 2:04:11, 2:04:17, 2:04:42, 2:05 flat.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. 2:04 used to mean something, Kevin. It used to mean something more than he's taken 2:04 and said, that's the worst I got. That's not a good one for me. I mean, he's surpassed 2:04, right? He's gotten better. That's the crazy thing, right? You're so used to
the marathon out of style.
He did.
Retired and he's the one who did that.
Right. We're so obsessed in the marathon with when people debut and they have a fast debut, but in reality, I mean, there's not a ton of dudes out there that debut and then they continue to climb the ladder and get better and better and better and
Mhm.
better and better. We're obsessed with that because we're like, oh wow, this is the floor. Now they're going to keep growing. Stats don't back that up. However, they do for Eliud Kipchoge, and that's
Mhm.
he's defied. I've said this over and over, but he's defied what is the tendency of the marathon. Look at some of those guys. Excuse me. You mentioned Adola. Where's Adola been? I mean, he seemed to be on the precipice there of being a star. And I know injuries happen, and you could look at Garamu, and Garamu's continued to be good, but he's not definitively the second best marathoner in the world by any stretch of the imagination, and that's kind of what he made it seem like. It's really hard to separate yourself in this event. Just
Yeah.
guys have good days, and you're gonna have a bad day, but he's impervious to that, and that's why he's one of the best athletes ever.
Mhm. All right. What about the other folks here? Who do you think could sneak in for a good performance? Garamu,
Mhm.
we have Marius Kipsiram, Washina, Tola, Kitata, Sandre Moen,
Mm.
Sisse Lema. Did anybody jump out here to you?
Well, like I said, Garamu. I think he showed his versatility by not only running 2:02:55, which says enough about him, but also getting silver in Doha. And I know that's a forgotten marathon, and who cares about that? But he was very, very close to winning gold in a race against. Gosh, I'm gonna now. Oh gosh, I had it right there. I had it. Lasisa. Uh, and Lasisa thrives in that tactical, that
Mm-hmm.
championship style marathon. And we can't thought coming in, Garamu, he's a 202 guy, but we've seen too many guys run fast in like a Dubai and then stink in championship races to really think that this was going to be his forte. No, he ran well there, and so we know he can run well in a London setting. I think adding that to his resume only reinforces that he's going to be, a guy that's going to stick around. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so I actually would. I'm going to pick him. Not that anyone cares, but I'm going to pick him to finish second.
It's a good pick for the reasons you mentioned. I like Sisse Lema, 2:03:30
Mm.
36, as I mentioned, in Berlin in 2019. But one thing that he has on the rest of the field, he's run a marathon this year, Lincoln. He ran the Tokyo
Oh,
Marathon
yep,
in March
yep.
before everything got shut down. 2:04:51. That might be useful because I think there might be some rust with a lot of these other runners on the list. But I think there's going to be a nice group going through. I don't know yet what the pace is going to be called for, but would be surprised if it was slower than 61:45 at
Yeah.
halfway. Yeah. So I think it's
Oh my God,
going to
61:45. No, I was going to put the over under at 61 minutes.
okay.
I mean, do you think that's too aggressive? I guess we haven't talked about that yet.
20 no,
I
no, yeah, no, you sound right. That sounds right. 61 sounds right. 202.
I mean, somebody will, yeah,
Look, everybody's going to take their
somebody will
shot.
go out that hard.
Everybody,
Yeah,
yeah, a lot of people go out that hard. You know why? Because they want to
yeah,
be the one to beat the guy who I just called the greatest athlete of all time, potentially. Like,
yeah.
why would you not take your shot? What would you rather do? Potentially upset Kipchoge and maybe blow up, or finish a conservative fourth and run 205?
I don't. We say
There's nothing
that
to
though,
gain
but
by it.
we say that, right? That's the logical answer, but we've seen this before with, I think of Farah. Well, just go out and try to run 12:45. You've got a 12:45 PR, and it doesn't happen. And that's easier said than done. A little bit different in the
That's
marathon.
different though. There's medals. There's medals at stake there. You want to leave with a medal, right? That's different. There's no
Yeah.
medals. There's no medals here. And these guys already have
Okay.
fast PRs. They already can get into any race they want. They're gonna go with him. This is not. You do not think this is gonna be a solo run. There's gonna be
No.
people with
No. No. No.
Kipchoge
No. No.
until they can
Yeah.
no longer run at that pace. We got some. We have an American, Jared Ward, in there, and we have a
Yeah.
Canadian, Cam Levins, who is a late
Ooh,
ad there. Yeah.
big.
As Jared Ward said on our podcast, his goal is to not get lapped because he thinks he can run the race of his life if he does that. So,
Yeah.
but I'm fascinated by, and this is something we talked about in the
Spoiler
podcast.
alert: he's going to get left.
We don't know.
He's going to get lapped.
Come on. You think so?
Okay. If they're running
Well, there's an
201,
additional.
yes.
I looked at yes. If they do 201, yes. There's an additional 1,400 meters that's off the loop at the end.
Okay.
So
Okay.
he could be a little farther than, if I'm looking at the map right, he could be more than 2,100 meters behind and still not get lapped. Anyway,
Okay.
all that to say, but what I'm interested with Ward is not just the lapping question. Is his idea of the unconventional buildup, because he said if this works, he's never going to do this long marathon buildup again because it's truncated because of how quickly he found out about this race. Yes, it could go horribly wrong, but it also could go really well with the pressure completely off and all these races feeling like a bonus.
Well, and I think somebody like him in his 30s who's been there, done that as far as making an Olympic team, finishing top 10 at the Olympics, I think it's, a good race here. I think you could certainly make the argument of less is more. Think how many miles are on his legs. Now, there's thousands upon thousands of miles on every marathoner's legs, but he may not need the 10, 12-week buildup anymore. And I know it would be a small sample size. If this went well, there may be other factors other than just the fact that he's maybe slightly undertrained. But I could certainly see that. I would think the adhering exactly to the, because he said what he usually has a 12-week buildup and this is an 8, or he usually does a 10, 12. Okay.
12, I said, yeah.
And certainly to the fact that, he's coming off a bad one at the trials. And now I know that's been 7 months ago, or it's going to be 8 months, or no, 7 months ago. But if that was a 12-week buildup, you would think, well, I've got a good reason to change my routine. My last race didn't go well. And so here, of course, obviously nowhere near as hard as Atlanta, and he could use all the fresh legs he's going to get, or going to have, because it's probably going to feel uncomfortable real early. If if he goes through the half in 64 minutes, I don't know how fast he wants to go through. It's not going to be comfy. It's not going to feel real good. Right. And so, but if his goal is to not get lapped, he may have to run 63.5 through 63.30 through the half. I don't know. And that would be a good, if he runs 2:08, that's a great day for him. He may still get lapped.
Yeah.
But my thing is, I think being undertrained is probably a little bit better for him to try to maybe have those snappy legs that he possibly wouldn't have otherwise. I don't know. That's just a suggestion. That's just me speculating. I have no idea.
Well, no, I think you could be right. And also you keep from overthinking too. And especially after how things went wrong in Atlanta, there'd be reason to be like, wait a minute, maybe I should change it. But now you don't have any time. In 7 weeks, just get miles in and get ready to get on the start line and then go for it. Yep. He was talking about, I heard him talk before about, Lifetime Fitness, sort of cashing in on that, and how he's, accrued all these miles throughout the years and tapping into that, as opposed to just like, oh, well, 6 weeks ago I did this really good tempo run. So it'd be interesting to say, Cam Levins, you have any thoughts on his chances? He's been pretty quiet recently.
Yeah, Cam has one real good marathon, and I think he's struggled elsewhere. Otherwise, I need to look it up. I think he's run 2:09. Yeah, I mean, Cam Levins, I think of as kind of two different athletes. I kind of thought he was going to be a phenom, and he's had good races, but as he's gotten older, it's been more and more of hit and miss. So his last marathon was about a year ago, and he ran 2:15. So he's coming off a pretty tough one, but he did run a national record 2:09.25 the year before that. So it's kind of which Cam Levins are you going to get? I imagine a good battle, a good guy to track would be Jared Ward for him. So maybe he can kind of gauge off of him. But yeah, I don't know. Cam's he's an interesting guy. He started out his career running 200 miles a week. He goes to NOP. That works and then until it doesn't. And then now he's kind of in the third act of his career, going back to, I think he's with his college coach now. I could be wrong. So we'll see now that he's 31, like, is there any pop left in for Cam Levins? We'll find out. Obviously he's not going to be a factor up front by any means, but if he beat Jared Ward, which I don't think he will, but if he did, that's a huge day for him.
Well, there's a lot of people in the 210 range. We're so obsessed with the front of this field as we should be, but there's an additional 15 or so guys who are in here between 210 and 215, actually probably upwards of 20 if you want to throw in the 216 guys, because there's a lot of Brits here who are going to be going for the Olympic standard, who I believe the plan is still to be paced by Sir Mo Farah. Is that correct?
Mo.
Per your understanding?
Per my sources, yeah, that's my understanding. That's what my sources have been telling me. Updating. I have a conference call with them every day. That's a joke. Yeah, so the Olympic standard is 2:11:30. I mean, I would think a lot of dudes will get that, right? So,
Yeah.
could see it.
Well, some of these
For
216 people, it's a reach for some of these 216
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. But I mean, I don't know. You could have a big day. I mean, some people are in the shapes of their lives, right? I mean, the marathon is probably the one race that's like, not that it's ideal to be in a pandemic as far as training, but the fact that you don't need a ton of races to necessarily get in shape for the marathon. You can just kind of get out there and train, and maybe distractions are limited. I don't know. I'm reaching here, but I think you'll see a lot of people hitting the Olympic standard. A loop course that's completely flat. That's we've been told is faster than the usual course. Yeah, you're going to see a lot of. There's going to be a lot of running nerds that are real excited at the world record for most sub 210s, and we may get that here.
In terms of a time prediction, I'm going to put Kipchoge between his two fastest regular marathons, non-time trial marathons. I'm going to put him at 2:02:05. I'm going to take Hugh Brasher's word for it that the course is faster than the regular London Marathon course. So he's going to run faster than that 2:02:37, and he's going to be about 25 seconds off of the world record. 2:02:05 is my pick.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna go 2:01:59. I'm feeling real confident in Kipchoge. I mean, we're talking about a guy who needs to run 2 minutes slower than his last marathon. Now, granted, I know he doesn't have every single Nike athlete out there. He doesn't have a laser car, and he's not running in a course that was literally flattened for him. But I think all that stuff is worth less than 2 minutes. And so I think he is better than he was in 2019 and in April of 2019, because I don't think he had a perfect day in April 2019 when he ran 2:02:30, whatever, 37. Yeah, I think he breaks 2:02. I think he's going to, and I'll just say right under 2:01:59.
I like how you're 6 seconds off of my time. You didn't really cover our bases. You're only 6 seconds off my time. Okay.
Kevin, he doesn't want to see it. He doesn't want to see two twos in his time. No 2:02. He's 2:01. And let's see. He's run everything. Let's see. He's done 1:59. Okay, so he's done everything. Never mind. Sorry. Because that was what he said after London. He said, I finally got my 2:02, because he hadn't run a 2:02 before, because he had only run a 2:01 previously, so and a 2 flat, and then obviously added the 1:59. So I think he wants to. It's been 2 years since he's running the 2:01s, Kevin. 2 years. Does Kipchoge have a 2:01 problem? I think is one of the big storylines going in. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, he's going to win. I think he's going to dominate.
Real quick before we go, I'm going to play a game of Would You Be Surprised? And I'm going to say an Eliud Kipchoge time. You tell me, would you be surprised?
Okay.
2:01:40.
No.
2:01:30 world record.
Always need to be surprised by a world record. I don't want to act facetious and be like, no, he's going to break a world record. Doesn't matter if he's running on the Rocky Mountains. Yes, I'll be surprised if he breaks the world record by 9 seconds.
Okay.
There's a difference between being totally floored and surprised. I would not be totally floored to the extent of less of a surprise than when Bekele ran 2:01:41 in Berlin last year when we were in Doha, and I thought you were joking. I remember you were on your computer, and I woke up after going to bed in Doha at approximately 6 a.m. and you said Bekele ran 2:01:41, and I just thought you were totally joking. I mean, I just totally thought that was made up. So I'll be surprised if Kipchoge runs 2:01:30, but not overly stunned, I guess.
2:03:15.
2:03:15. Yeah. Floored, stunned.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
You got.
What, would you?
You
Would
have,
you not?
no, I wouldn't be surprised with a 2:03. I'd be surprised with 2:04 because you never know with the weather. Something goes crazy. I mean, if he lost and
Yeah.
ran 2:03, I'd be surprised. But if I just heard the number, okay, if you told me Kipchoge ran 2:03, I'd say, oh, maybe it got kind of tactical. Maybe there's some argy bargy there in the last couple laps.
No.
Maybe Timothy
Argy
Chariot
bargy.
came out.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'll be surprised if it's above 2:02. I'd be quite surprised. I don't think Kipchoge messes around with 2:03 shape anymore. He's just like, what? Does he even know how to run 2:03? You know, you talk about getting out of like your cadence. It's like, you know, back in my running days, you know, when I was really in shape, like 6-minute pace per mile felt better than 7-minute mile pace. It just didn't. 7-minute mile pace felt like the cadence didn't feel right. That's the same for Eliud Kipchoge at a 2:03 marathon. It's like, I don't know where to put my feet. This feels weird, you know? So I don't think we're going to see that.
I like how there's a very narrow range with which you will not be surprised. It's like he only 202 through 201 high, but anything 201 mid.
Yeah, I've given him about 20
202.
seconds. I think we can pinpoint this at right at. He's pretty predictable, right? You can put him right at about a 20-second range. Any times out of that, I go from I am completely stunned.
Shocked, I tell you, shocked. I'm gonna call you when the race is over and he runs 2:03:01. Like Lincoln pulled all his hair out, just completely beside himself. All right, well, you all can watch the race in London. If you're in Canada or other select countries on the website FloTrack.org. We'll, of course, be back on Friday to do the women's preview. Thank you to Alon for producing this episode. We'll talk to you guys soon.